So I would like to call to order the meeting of the Advisory Commission on the Administration of Justice's Subcommittee on Criminal Justice Information Sharing. Today is Monday, October 19th of 2020 at 1:01 p.m. Members and staff, please remember to mute your microphones when you are not speaking and unmute your microphone before you begin speaking. Members, please wave your hand or unmute and speak up, announcing your name to get my attention if you wish to speak. Roll call. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Grierson. Ms. Grosnick.
Present.
Mr. Lawson.
Here.
Ms. Souza Llamas.
Present.
Ms. Noble.
Present.
Mr. Olmsted.
Here.
Ms. Polaski.
Present.
Mr. Quick.
Present.
Mr. Stefani.
Here.
Chair McKay.
Present.
Mr. Grierson. You have 9 members present.
That constitutes a quorum, so we can move on with the meeting. Thank you so much. The next agenda item is 3, public comment. Public testimony under this item may be presented by phone or written comment. Because of time considerations, each caller offering testimony during this period for public comment will be limited to not more than 2 minutes. A person may also have comments added to the minutes of the meeting by submitting them in writing, either in addition to testifying or in lieu of testifying. Written comments may be submitted by email at jordan.haas@lcb.state.nv.us or facsimile at area code 775-684-6761 or via mail at 401 South Carson Street, Carson City, Nevada, 89701, before, during, or after the meeting. To dial in to provide testimony during this period of public comment in the meeting, anytime after 12:30 p.m. on Monday, October 19th of 2020, you may dial area code 669-900-6833. When prompted to provide your meeting ID, please enter 960-6907-3487, then press pound. When prompted for a participant ID, please enter pound. To resolve any issues related to dialing in to provide public comment for this meeting, please call area code 775-684-6990. Ms. Norris graciously offered to manage public comment today. Thank you for doing that. Broadcast, please unmute the first caller.
Chair McKay, the public is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you for that. With there being no public comment, we will close that agenda item and move to agenda item 4, Chair's opening remarks and introductions. Welcome, everyone. It's good to see you all. Thank you to the members for serving on this important subcommittee. Thank you to the LCB staff for coordinating this effort. And thank you to the presenters for being available today. I'm Mindy McKay, Division Administrator for the DPS, Department of Public Safety, Records, Communications, and Compliance Division. And I'm the CJIS Systems Officer for Nevada as it relates to Nevada having access to the FBI's criminal justice information systems. I've been with the Department of Public Safety for almost 24 years, holding multiple roles throughout this division. I'm humbled to have been appointed to this role as chair of the subcommittee. I look forward to the very important work that we hope to accomplish. And with that, if I could have everyone introduce themselves, please provide your name, the agency you work for, and the role that you play at that agency. And to make it easier, I'll go ahead and take roll call. So if Miss Heather, or do you go by Evie? If you could please introduce yourself, the agency you work for, and your role at that agency.
Thank you. My name is Evie Grosnick. I'm a Chief Deputy Public Defender with the Washoe County Public Defender's Office.
Thank you and welcome. Next is Captain Tom Lawson. If you could please unmute and introduce yourself and the agency you work for and your role at that agency.
There I am.
Hello, I'm Tom Lawson. I'm with the Department of Public Safety Parole and Probation Division, and I am the captain over our headquarters section, which includes our pre-release, re-entry, records, and personnel, and et cetera.
Thank you, sir, and welcome. Next is Erica Susie Yamas. If you could please unmute, provide your name, the agency you work for, and your role at that agency.
Hi, my name is Erica Susie Yamas. I am the Records Bureau Chief with the Records Communications and Compliance Division within the Nevada Department of Public Safety.
Thank you and welcome. Next will be Jennifer Noble. Please unmute, provide your name, your agency, and your role at your agency.
Jennifer Noble, Chief Deputy District Attorney in the Washoe County District Attorney's Office, Appellate Division.
Thank you and welcome. Next will be Fred Olmsted. If you could please unmute, give us your name, your agency, and your role at your agency.
Good afternoon. My name is Fred Olmsted. I'm the General Counsel for the Nevada State Board of Nursing. As such, I am the person under NRS 176.01248 that was appointed by the Director of the Department of Public Safety because I use the information relating to the records of criminal history for purposes other than criminal justice. For example, the criminal history reports can be used to determine eligibility for employment and licensure. At the Board of Nursing, we do licensure. But since I've been appointed, I'll be speaking up for people that need criminal history for employment purposes. And that's what I do, and that's why I'm here.
Excellent. Thank you so much and welcome. Next, we'll go to Heather Polaski. I believe she's on the phone. If you could please state your name, your agency, and your role at your agency.
Good afternoon. This is Heather Polaski. I work for Las Vegas Metro Police, and in that role, my title is CJIS Manager, so that comprises I'm a records manager here in the records department. I serve as the agency's TAC and also the scope administrator for Clark County.
Wonderful. Thank you and welcome. Next will be Under Sheriff Robert Quick. Unmute, state your name, your agency, and your role at your agency, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Quick. I'm the Under Sheriff of Lander County Sheriff's Office in Battle Mountain. And I also serve as the General Agency Coordinator and the Agency Security Officer.
Excellent. Thank you so much and welcome. Next will be Rick Stephanie. If you could please unmute, state your name, your agency, and your role at your agency.
Hi, this is Rick Stephanie. I am with the Supreme Court AOC. I am the Deputy Director in charge of all IT for the court.
Excellent. Thank you and welcome. And let the record show that Steve Grierson, the Court Executive Officer with 8th Judicial District Court, has joined us. And Mr. Grierson, if you could please unmute and state your name, your agency, and your role at your agency for us to introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Steve Grierson, Court Executive Officer for the 8th Judicial District Court here in Clark County.
Wonderful. Welcome. Thank you so much. We have a large agenda, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We may take a break if we look like we're going to run longer than around 4 p.m. So I'll be watching the time in the agenda items as we go through. I won't be that much of a slave driver. So with that, I'm going to close agenda item 4 and move on to agenda item 5, election of vice chair from the members of the subcommittee on criminal justice information sharing. Do I have a motion by anyone to elect or nominate someone to be the vice chair of this subcommittee? Is anyone willing to volunteer? No one's eager, huh? Well, do you want me to make a suggestion?
Madam Chair, Robert, for the record, I was the vice chair on the previous committee, and I'd be willing to submit my name for consideration.
Under Sheriff Quick, was that you?
It was.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for volunteering to do that. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Noble. And do I have a second?
Tom Lawson, I'll second.
Thank you, sir. And so I'm going to go ahead and ask that we take roll call, but when they do take roll call, if you could please indicate by saying yes or no, rather than saying yay or nay. It's a little difficult to discern that. So say yes or no during roll call. So Madam Secretary, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Grierson,
Yes.
Ms. Grosnick,
Yes.
Mr. Lawson,
Yes.
Ms. Souza Yamas,
Yes.
Ms. Noble,
Yes.
Mr. Olmsted,
Yes.
Ms. Polaski,
Yes.
Mr. Quick,
Yes.
Mr. Stephanie,
Yes.
Chair McKay.
Yes.
That is unanimous.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, congratulations, Under Sheriff Quick. I look forward to serving beside you on this subcommittee. Thank you for your service and thank you for volunteering. With that, I'll close agenda item 5 and move to agenda item 6, presentation on the responsibilities and authority of the Subcommittee on Criminal Justice Information Sharing and Working Groups. Ms. Kathleen Norris with the Legal Division of the Legislative Council Bureau is with us to conduct that presentation. Ms. Norris, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Kathleen Norris, and I'm speaking as part of the Legislative Council Bureau in the Legal Division. So we're going to start off this presentation talking a little bit about the legislative history of this subcommittee. In 2017, the Advisory Commission on Nevada Criminal Justice Information Sharing was abolished and replaced by this subcommittee, which is housed under the Advisory Commission on the Administration of Justice. The chair of the Advisory Commission appoints the chair of this subcommittee and all of the members except one who's appointed by the Department of Public Safety. This member must use the central repository for purposes other than criminal justice information sharing, such as for employment or licensure. Chair Wynn of the Advisory Commission on the Administration of Justice has appointed 10 members to this subcommittee. Thus, there needs to be at least 6 members present to take any action at the meetings. Generally, this subcommittee's duties relate to criminal justice information sharing. Specifically, this subcommittee reviews requests from criminal justice agencies regarding the capabilities of the Nevada Criminal Justice Information System. The subcommittee also reviews technological and operational issues related to the Nevada Criminal Justice Information System as well. Finally, this subcommittee with submitting a report to the Advisory Commission on the Administration of Justice. This report should include all of the recommendations made by this subcommittee. Additionally, statute authorizes the chair of the subcommittee to appoint working groups who may deal with specific issues under the purview of the subcommittee and also deal with other in-depth reviews of the impacts of the requests from criminal justice agencies related to the Nevada Criminal Justice Information System. The chair of this subcommittee will appoint chairs of the working groups, and those chairs must report back to the subcommittee regarding their activities. Finally, because of the sensitive nature of criminal justice information systems in this state, the working groups are not subject to the open meeting law or the public records law. Madam Chair, that concludes my presentation.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Norris. Do we have any questions or comments by the members? Hearing and seeing none. Thank you again, Ms. Norris. And I'm going to go ahead and close that agenda item and move to agenda item 7, review and possible amendment to the bylaws of the Subcommittee on Criminal Justice Information Sharing. So hopefully you all received the bylaws and had an opportunity to review them. I have, and I do have some suggested changes to the bylaws. So I can go ahead and go through my suggested changes first and then go to the members for any suggested changes that you may have after the review of the bylaws, if you don't mind. So I'll go ahead and get started with my version of suggested changes to the bylaws. So if you want to follow along, the cover page of the bylaws, I just have a question which might be best suited for LCB legal. It states on the cover of the bylaws, approved by the Advisory Commission on the Administration of Justice. Is it a requirement for the ACAJ to approve these? Or is it just nice to have?
Kathleen Norris, Deputy Legislative Counsel for the record. Madam Chair, there's no requirement in statute that the subcommittee needs to have bylaws. So if you want them to be approved, then you're welcome to do that within the purview of the bylaws, or else you can take out that requirement from the bylaws.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to page number 1, under number 1, authority. We do have some suggested changes regarding the citation of statute, which codified the subcommittee in 2017. It previously referenced the actual bill drafts, the bills that created the subcommittee because it hadn't been codified yet. Now that we're codified, we'd like to remove the reference to the bills and actually reference Nevada Revised Statute 176.0121 through NRS 176.0129 and also NRS 176.01248. And at the end of that paragraph under section 1.1, I would like to add former Advisory Committee on Nevada Criminal Justice of Information Sharing, I would like to add in 2017. So those are my suggested changes on page 1 underneath 1 authority, 1.1 authority for Nevada advisory process. Are there any comments on that one before I move forward? I think I'll take a vote at the very end. So we'll just take comments throughout. Okay, so moving on to section 2 definitions. Nevada Criminal Justice Information System. In sub A, computerized criminal history, CCH in parentheses, which contains records of individuals, I would like to add information specific to arrests, prosecution, court, detention, and supervision. And I would like to strike the words convicted and sentenced in Nevada. Not in Nevada, but strike the words convicted and sentenced. So I'm going to read the way that I would like to propose the sentence to read. Computerized criminal history, CCH, which contains records of individuals, information specific to arrests, prosecution, court, detention, and supervision in Nevada. So if you're all okay with my suggested changes on that sentence, that's how it would read after the changes. Any comments on that one?
Hi, Mindy. This is Heather Polaski. I just have a question because we're so used to seeing convicted and sentenced in there. What's behind making the change? I'm just curious.
Sure. So when my suggestion for the word court, court would be not only convictions and sentencing, because people aren't always convicted and therefore they're not always sentenced. Their charges could be dismissed. It could be found not guilty. So I wanted to remove the references only to conviction and sentencing and broaden it by stating that it'll include all court data.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the question. Any other comments on sub A on number 2? Okay. Sub D is in David. Dangerous offender notification. It's the system, not the status. So DONS, DON stands for the Dangerous Offender Notification System. So I'm proposing to change the word status to be system. Comments on that? Excellent. Sub E as in Edward under number 2. Proposing some added language at the very beginning to state repository for information concerning orders for protection, and striking out the words Nevada domestic violence protection orders. And the purpose for that is last session 2019, we had a couple of bills passed that expanded our repository for protection orders. It used to just be domestic violence protection orders. It expanded, two bills expanded it to be multiple protection orders, and I'll go through some language on that further on into that sub E. So I want to strike out the reference to domestic violence because it's no longer just domestic violence. As we go more into that sentence, it states which contain records of individuals against whom a Nevada court has issued an order for protection against domestic violence. And I want to add, comma, orders for protection against high-risk behavior, comma, orders for protection against stalking, comma, aggravated stalking or harassment, and orders for protection against a person alleged to have committed the crime of sexual assault, because those are the protection orders that were recently added to the repository in 2019. Any comments on that? Hey, moving on to, we're going to stay under number 2, moving on to page 2. I am proposing to strike sub H as in Henry because NCGIS no longer includes Otis. That is the offender tracking information system that belongs directly and specifically under the Division of Parole and Probation within the Department of Public Safety. So I'd like to strike that as reference to NCGIS. Comments on that? Okay. Moving on to sub, which will now be sub H, but it is sub I right now. State Live Scan Network, which electronically connects the fingerprints taken and charges issued when booking an individual in a county or jail with the CCH file in the central repository. The word "and" after that, I'd like to strike that, put a comma, and add the language, the Western Identification Network and the Federal Bureau of Investigations, spelling out FBI, putting the acronym FBI in parentheses, and then striking the reference to NGI. So it'll just say the FBI system. Comments on that suggested change? Okay. Moving on to the next paragraph under letter I, it begins, and CGIS also provides a pathway on page 2. There's some more subsections A through G on that one. Going to sub E as in Edward, it references the law enforcement online portal. The FBI has changed that name. It is now the Law Enforcement Enterprise Portal. So it's no longer LEO, it is now LEAP. So I would just like to make that change. Comments on that? Okay. Next is the paragraph underneath all of those subs. It begins, finally, and CGIS provides a mechanism for Nevada criminal justice agencies to access criminal history record information. I would like to add a comma right there, strike the word "and." So it will read criminal history record information, driver's license information, and I would like to add comma "and other criminal justice related data of other states via NLETs. We access not only criminal history and driver's license information from other states, but we also access other criminal justice data. So I wanted to make sure that we made that clear in that paragraph. Any comments on that suggested change? Right. Moving on to closer to the bottom of page 2 under section 2.2, FBI CGIS Systems Agency, or the CSA. In the very last paragraph, the very last sentence, it begins, the CSA for the state of Nevada is the Department of Public Safety. I want to add to that, currently delegated to the Records, Communications, and Compliance Division, so that it's clear where the CSA is housed within the Department of Public Safety. Any comments on that suggested change? Okay. Moving on to page 3, under section 2.4. Again, we're striking out the reference to the bills and just referencing the statute that we were codified in. There's that, and then similar thing under section 2.5 on page 3, we're striking out the reference to the bills and referencing the codified statute for the subcommittee. And then lastly, on page 3, at the very bottom, very last sentence of the paragraph, it states there are 12 members of the subcommittee. I just want to strike that sentence altogether because the membership of the subcommittee can change at any time. And I don't want to have to change this every time that number of members changes. So that's my reasoning behind that suggested modification. Comments on that one? Okay, moving on to page 4. Again, we're striking the reference to the bill, referencing the codified statute a couple of different times on that page. And then under section 3, which is the objectives, under sub 3.2, provide a forum for the presentation and exchange of information relative to the Nevada criminal justice community. I want to add language just behind that that states, and its processes. So the sentence will read, provide a forum for the presentation and exchange of information relative to the Nevada criminal justice community and its processes. Comments on that one? Great. We're going to get through this. Next is page 5. Underneath number 4, subcommittee meetings. We're going to strike, we're suggesting to strike section 4.1 that currently reads, subcommittee meetings shall be conducted in accordance with Nevada open meeting law. We're going to strike that. We have our own rules of order that we are governed by, and LCB Legal can speak up if they have any insight into what that exactly is, but it was suggested that we strike that. So then the next one would be 4.2, which would now be the new 4.1. We want to add language to the beginning of that that states, subject to money available in the budget of the Advisory Commission on the Administration of Justice, comma, strike out the word regular, and it'll say, subject to the money available in the budget of the ACAJ, meetings will be held at times as directed by the call of the chair. So we're going to strike the words quarterly and such other. We're striking those. So that sentence would then read, if we make these changes, subject to money available in the budget of the Advisory Commission on the Administration of Justice, comma, meetings will be held at times as directed by the call of the chair. Any comments on that change or the change before that? Okay. Page number 6, under number 5, which is subcommittee officers, under 5.1, I'm suggesting that the first sentence starts, the officers of the subcommittee will consist of the chair and vice chair. Statute states that the chair of the ACAJ appoints the members of the subcommittee. So I want to make that clear by changing it to state the chair of the ACAJ appoints the members of the subcommittee, period. Comments on that change? All right. Staying on page 6, section 5.1.1.3, the last part of that, the last sentence. So the last sentence starts, the chair will represent the subcommittee at the ACAJ. And it goes on to state, and leave the authority to designate a vice chairperson and all of that. I want to strike all of that because statute NRS 176 does not allow for designees. So we cannot have that in here. Comments on that suggested change? Okay. Staying on page 6, under 5.2, staff of the Legislative Council Bureau will record all subcommittee meetings, take minutes, and make minutes available to the public, period. So I want to strike out in accordance with Nevada open meeting law to be consistent with the strikeout of section 4.1. Comments on that change? And then you'll notice that there's a reference again to the bills of 2017 session. We're going to strike out the reference to the bills and reference the statute that codified the subcommittee. Moving on to section 6, it starts at the bottom of page 6 and carries over the top of page 7, subcommittee membership, and then it states 6.1, there will be one class of membership on the subcommittee. I'm not sure what this means, so I don't know if this section is necessary. If anyone has an idea from when Julie Butler was the chair and y'all met during that time, what the intent of that section was, I'd be happy to hear that. No idea. We can strike it if it doesn't make sense to anyone else. I was proposing to strike that myself. Okay. All right, going to page 7. Again, you'll notice that there was a reference to the bills. So we're going to strike out the bills and add in the statute reference. If you go down to section 7.7, staff of the CSO and enterprise IT services, we have more. So my division has more than just enterprise IT services that provides IT services to us. So I would propose that we strike out the reference to enterprise IT services. So strike the word enterprise, keep the words IT services, and add the word providers after that. So it would read, staff of the CSO and IT services providers will analyze the working group's topic papers, and the language after that will stay the same. Comments on that suggested modification? Okay. And we're getting down to the end. On section 9 at the bottom of page 8, it appears that this had been discussed before. I'm not sure if it was ever included in a modified version of the bylaws, so I'm just going to say it again. Under section 9.1.1, be an authorized user of NCGIS and proficiently trained as defined by the NCGIS administrative policy. We would like to add language after administrative policy to read, or be an authorized user of criminal history record information from the central repository via a statute approved by the FBI under Public Law 92-544. If you recall Mr. Olmstead's introduction, he is a civil user of our criminal justice data for civil purposes. We don't want to leave those customers out. So it would hopefully encompass not only our criminal justice users, but our civil users of our criminal justice data. Any comments on that? Okay. On page 9, section 9.1.2, it begins, be a full-time paid employee of a Nevada criminal justice agency, for example, not a contractor or vendor. We would like to add, or be an authorized user of criminal history record information from the central repository via a statute approved by the FBI under Public Law 92-544 to be consistent with the previous suggested change. So if you're okay with that, it's the same as what I just suggested before. And then lastly, and I'll be quiet and I'll open it up to the other members, section 9.1.3 is kind of a new section because we added 9.1.2. More than one person from the same agency may be appointed to a working group. However, in matters which require a vote, the agency shall have only one vote and not one vote for each member on a working group. Are there any comments on that suggested change? Okay. I'm done with suggesting my changes. If anyone has any other suggested changes, please unmute, let me know who you are, and then proceed with your suggested changes.
Madam Chair, Evie Grosnick with the Washoe County Public Defender's Office.
Yes, ma'am.
I wonder if you want to amend 4.3 on page 4 that provides a specific number for the quorum, since you potentially change the number of people on the committee. Do you want to leave 6 as a quorum?
No, thank you very much for catching that. I would like to strike that as well. Thank you. Any other suggestions? Any concerns about my suggested changes? Okay, if nobody has any others, yes. Under Sheriff Quick or Vice Chair Quick.
I just have two things. Under that same 4.3, do we want to strike the word regularly on that and just leave scheduled meetings, since it's going to be the meetings will be set by the chair?
I'm okay with that. So it will read a majority. So on page 5 under 4.3, which is now going to become 4.2, it starts a majority of the subcommittee members present. Currently it says at a regularly scheduled meeting. So you're proposing to strike a regularly, where it would read a majority of the subcommittee members present at scheduled meetings constitute a quorum, correct?
That is my suggestion.
Okay.
And then I just have one question on one of your changes. Since it seems we're striking the references to Nevada open meeting law, maybe LCD could explain what the difference is and how we're doing the meetings and the open meeting law.
Ms. Norris, would you be able to speak to that?
Kathleen Norris, Deputy Legislative Counsel for the record. Madam Chair, the activities in the meetings of the subcommittee itself are subject to the open meeting law. The working groups in those meetings, specifically only to the working groups, are not subject to the open meeting law and the public records law.
Thank you for clarifying that. Vice Chair, does that clarify for you?
It does. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
I have no other comments.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any other comments or suggestions or concerns? Okay, well, I know I went through that quickly. Hopefully you were able to digest that as I fed you the elephant one bite in one whole bite. If you're comfortable, if anybody would like to make a motion to accept my suggested changes and those of the other members that spoke up, I'm happy to entertain a motion.
This is Jennifer Noble. I make that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Noble. Do I have a second?
This is Robert Quick. I'll second.
Thank you, Vice Chair, for seconding. Again, when we take roll call, remember to state yes or no instead of yay or nay. So yes or no. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll for the vote?
Mr. Grierson,
Yes.
Ms. Grosnick,
Yes.
Mr. Lawson,
Yes.
Suso, yes.
Yes.
Ms. Noble,
Yes.
Mr. Olmsted,
Yes.
Ms. Polaski,
Yes.
Mr. Quick,
Yes.
Mr. Stephanie,
Yes.
Chair McKay,
Yes.
and that is unanimous.
Thank you. So those suggested changes pass and will be made, and the corrected or amended version will be provided to everyone. All right. We'll go ahead and close that agenda item and move on to agenda item number 8, which is the presentation on topic paper 12, which will be presented by Allison Ristine, who is with the Records, Communications, and Compliance Division of the Department of Public Safety. Ms. Ristine, when you're ready, please unmute and present topic paper 12.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, members of the subcommittee. My name is Allison Ristine, and I'm with Department of Public Safety, Records, Communications, and Compliance Division. I am the Criminal History Repository Manager, and I would like to discuss a topic paper that I have out there on adding additional disposition codes. Madam Chair, would you like me to share my screen so that they can see the topic paper, or just go ahead and read it?
If you're able to share your screen, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. I will attempt to try this. There it is. Can everyone see my screen?
I can.
Okay. So the request of the working group is that the Nevada state rap sheets are used for multiple programs, both civil and criminal related, including but not limited to employment and licensing determinations, firearm checks, and criminal investigations, both in-state and nationwide. Accurate criminal history is crucial in the civil and criminal justice communities for making true and correct decisions as required by law within the scope of their duties. So we feel that adding these new disposition codes would allow agencies to use state criminal history without additional and timely research. Currently, our state CCH, or the computerized criminal history system, only allows for 10 different disposition codes to reflect that outcome of what criminal arrest charges are. So I have learned that courts use many different disposition codes, and hundreds of different disposition codes actually, and with several different code types that may or may not be separate from our state codes. So it's been very difficult for the criminal records unit that enters those final dispositions to accurately find a fit for the correct disposition code that the court is requesting. Sometimes it doesn't always accurately reflect that true outcome. So we're asking for 12 different additional disposition codes to be added to our criminal history system. At the bottom of page 1, you'll see what our current disposition codes are now. We have denied, dismissed, dismissed on appeal, guilty at trial, no charges filed, not guilty, on appeal, pled guilty, and reversed on appeal. And last but not least, we also have deferred. On page 2, these are the disposition codes that we are proposing to add. The first one is a bind over. This would not allow for any additional sentencing information, but would allow for justice courts to accurately reflect that the charge has been bound over to district court. And it would let law enforcement know that the case is still pending. The next one on the list is for warrants. That usually is for arrests made on warrants. And 9 times out of 10, we don't always get disposition information for that one. So it would not require any additional disposition information. The third one on the list is nolo contendere. That would allow all fields to, all sentencing fields to be required for entry. And it would actually, the purpose of that is to accurately reflect the outcome of a no contest plea. The next one down is dismissed after diversion. So it would be after a diversion program has been successfully completed, it would accurately reflect that there was a diversion in that sentence. Next one is dismissed mental defective. This one is specifically for firearm disqualifying purposes, and no sentencing information would be required. The next one down, DNC, would be dismissed new charges filed by the district attorney. No sentencing information would be required, and this is to show that charges were dismissed by the DA for new charges being filed. And then the criminal history at that point would reflect the new charges added by the district attorney. The next one is dismissed sentence on another charge. So again, no sentencing information would be required on the criminal history, and it just reflects that charges were dismissed for negotiations. The next one, RSH, or research complete. Again, no sentencing information would be required, but a comment would be required. These are for our backfill dispositions that are so old that retention timeframes have lapsed and we are no longer able to get dispositions. It would reflect, so instead of us constantly asking the court for more information, knowing that we've already asked them for this time and time again, that we're not going to get it and we can add it to our criminal history, that we've already conducted research on this and we cannot get a disposition for it. The next one, SID, is guilty sentence imposed after a deferral or a diversion program. All sentencing fields would be required, and this would explain an unsuccessful deferral or a diversion program. The next one is suspended sentence reinstated. Same thing, all sentencing fields would be required, and it would explain an unsuccessful deferral or diversion program. So if it was in a suspended sentence and they had reinstated it, it would reflect that it was unsuccessful. And now the sentence is being imposed. Page 3, SRV, guilty, suspended sentence revoked. All sentencing fields would be required. And this would explain again an unsuccessful deferral or diversion program. And last but not least, unknown, unable to associate dispo to charge. No sentencing information would be required, but a comment would be required. This is again for some older dispositions where we have multiple charges on the arrest, but we only have one disposition and we can't quite determine which charge that disposition is supposed to go to. We would be able to add the disposition to the best fitting charge and then put unknown or unable to associate the disposition to the other charges. That concludes my presentation. If I can open it up to any questions at this point.
Thank you, Ms. Ristine. I appreciate your time and thoroughness on that. Does anyone have any comments, questions, concerns?
Hi, Madam Chair. This is Heather Polaski at Las Vegas Metro, and I'm sorry I'm the only one not on my computer. I just have a comment on the bind over, and that one just speaks to my heart, and I appreciate it so much because officers in the field absolutely do not understand when that charge says dismissed that it's really going to another court, and they treat it like a dismissal. So I think that one's extremely important for them to have. So that was it, just a comment.
We agree as well. Thank you for that.
Yes, thank you, Heather. Anyone else have any comments, questions, concerns?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So I understand from the topic paper, it says that you don't have an idea of a time frame on this. Have you gotten any better idea since the paper was put out, and is there a fiscal impact for this?
Thank you for the question, Vice Chair. What I'm envisioning is that this would be included in our modernization program. Allison and Erica, Erica is one of our members. She can speak to that as well. And then Allison, being the presenter of this topic paper, she might be able to speak to that as well. So if either of you ladies can speak to, were you hoping that this was going to happen now or with the modernization?
This is Allison Ristine for the record. The hope is to have this done as quickly as possible so that we can accurately reflect our criminal history and disposition codes. Ultimately, we have gone this long without it, and we've done the best that we could to accurately reflect final dispositions. There would be additional technology involved. We would need to get AOC involved for the courts that report through the eDispo or the electronic disposition program. Those that also report through court view, which we call a crystal reporting. Those dispositions print directly to our unit. And then we would also have to get our vendor for our CCH involved in coding and also our EATS department involved in coding. So yes, it would take some time, most likely some billing and some fiscal impact as well as coding time. But the NCGIS modernization would also allow for this to be added into, I'm hoping.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Ristine, for answering that question. As far as cost, there would be a cost to us, the division, because we own that application, the computerized criminal history system. As far as the cost to any of the other agencies, when Ms. Ristine refers to working with AOC, any other agencies, I'm not sure because I'm not those agencies, so I would not be able to speak to that on their behalf. But we will remain cognizant of that. We try to with everything that we do when we touch the system. So thank you for that question. Normally what we do with these topic papers is they get submitted by someone. It could be a user, an agency, it could be internally by my staff. And the first place that these go are to the Northern and Southern working groups for review and consideration. If it is approved by both working groups, then it moves up to the subcommittee for review, consideration, and a vote. So this was reviewed by the Northern and Southern working groups previously and voted to move forward, which is why it's here. You will see on the last page, there are options for a vote if we want to take a vote today. But I don't want to cut anyone else off. So do we have any other questions, comments, or concerns about this topic paper? Seeing none, we would normally then move toward a vote. And using the options listed there on the last page, number 1 is to accept the proposal as suggested by the requester. Number 2 is to assign working group tasks to research the topic further and present findings to the ACAJ working groups. Number 3 would to be make no changes at this time. And then you can always suggest a number 4 for an other. So with that, I'm happy to entertain a motion on any of those options.
Move to approve option 1.
Second.
Okay, I'm sorry, for the record, who approved to motion it?
Steve Grierson.
Thank you. And who seconded it?
Madam Chair, Jennifer Noble.
Thank you so much. And again, we're going to take roll calls, so please indicate by stating yes or no. And Madam Secretary, if you could take roll call on this vote, thank you.
Mr. Grierson,
Yes.
Ms. Grosnick,
Yes.
Mr. Lawson,
Yes.
Ms. Sousa Yamas,
Yes.
Ms. Noble,
Yes.
Mr. Olmsted,
Yes.
Ms. Polaski,
Yes.
Mr. Quick,
Yes.
Mr. Stephanie,
Yes.
Chair McKay,
Yes.
and it's unanimous.
Thank you. So with that, topic paper number 12, option 1 was chosen, and we will move forward with that, whether it be now or in modernization, and be sure to work with all of the stakeholders and those agencies impacted. Thank you very much, Ms. Ristine, for presenting topic paper 12 today.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. I appreciate your time today.
Okay, we will close that agenda item and move on to agenda item 9. Presentation on the activities of the Nevada Offense Code Working Group as appointed by the 2017-2018 Subcommittee on Criminal Justice Information Sharing. And we have Judy Christensen with the Records, Communications, and Compliance Division in the Department of Public Safety, who is the chair of the NOC, or the Nevada Offense Code Working Group, here to present this topic for us. Ms. Christensen, whenever you're ready, you can unmute and begin. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. My name is Judy Christensen. I'm the manager of the Criminal Records Unit and the Nevada Offense Code Unit. And I'm here today to provide an overview of the NOC working group. And I'm going to try to get my video going. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and put up my presentation for everybody today. Hopefully this works. And I need to expand it. Hold on. I'm so sorry.
Judy, if you click from beginning, that should do it.
Oh, okay. That's what I was looking for. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Okay. So moving forward, working group was created in 2018 by the Subcommittee on Criminal Justice Information Sharing. The purpose is to represent the needs of the criminal justice community for criminal offense related items and to collaboratively review and make recommendations to policies and procedures of the Nevada Offense Code Unit. Our role is to help the subcommittee and the central repository with defining modifying and establishing guidelines for NOx as the Nevada revised statutes are amended each legislative session. Our current members of the NOC working group, I won't go through them all, but you can see them listed there. We have a wide representation of the state, the AG's office, AOC, statistics, NHP, and so forth. To date, the NOC working group has met to review the following topics to determine if changes to policy are warranted. So we have reviewed NRS 193.330.1B as it pertains to attempts for committing gross misdemeanor crimes. We have reviewed NRS 484B.657.1 and whether the misdemeanor crime of vehicular manslaughter should or should not be retained on criminal history. We have also reviewed NRS 179A.070 to determine rules to apply based on statute when determining if a misdemeanor crime should or should not be retained on criminal history. And just to give you an update on the 2019 legislature, it had a big impact on Nevada offense codes. And as a result of the 2019 legislative action, the NOC unit processed 306 new NOCs, and 210 of those were related to AB 236. We repealed 345 NOCs, and again, 278 of those repeals were related to AB 236. And we modified 121. The bulk of those modifications were due to renumbering of statutes, and 7 of the 121 were related to AB 236. Moving on, AB 236 provided revisions to possession of marijuana offenses, NRS 453.336. The current language of NRS 453.336.2 provides for the possession of Schedule 1 or 2 drugs, marijuana being a Schedule 1 drug, not for purpose of sale in the following amounts. I won't go through every single amount, but basically it does list out specific amounts. And the short of the story is that the NRS does not provide for a person who possesses NRS 453.336.2A addresses 42 grams, but less than 100 grams. But NRS 453.339 provides that a person who possesses more than 50 pounds of marijuana shall be charged with trafficking. The problem is that currently NRS 453.336 does not provide a penalty for possession of a controlled substance, not for purpose of sale, if the amount in possession is between 100 grams of Schedule 1 or 2 controlled substance and 50 pounds of marijuana, which is NRS 453.339. Agencies are currently having to book persons who are in possession of marijuana in the amounts of 100 grams to 50 pounds on trafficking charges instead of possession charges. We respectfully ask the committee to consider revising NRS 453.336 to fix this oversight on the issues presented. The NOC working group has also discussed vehicular manslaughter. NRS 484B.657.1 provides that a person who, while driving or in actual physical control of any vehicle on a highway or premises to which the public has access, proximately causes the death of another person through an act or omission that constitutes simple negligence, is guilty of vehicular manslaughter and shall be punished for a misdemeanor. NRS 179A.070.2G provides that misdemeanor traffic-related offenses shall not be retained on criminal history. The NOC working group respectfully asks the subcommittee to consider revising NRS 179A.070 to include misdemeanor vehicular manslaughter as a retainable offense on criminal history. And thank you, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Christensen. Do I have any comments, questions, concerns from the members on this topic presentation? Okay, so I'm going to remind everyone that as Ms. Norris presented at the beginning of the meeting, one of the purposes and responsibilities of the subcommittee is to provide a report to the ACAJ. We will be doing that at the next ACAJ meeting in November, and it is a topic on this agenda that we will further discuss. This is something that we could consider, these recommendations out of this presentation. We could consider adding into our report to the ACAJ regarding the amendment of statutes specific to these challenges that the NOC unit faces with regard to offenses and retainable offenses. So I'll probably reference this again when we get to that agenda item a little bit later. With that said, are there any comments, questions, suggestions? Nope. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Christensen, again. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you,
And I'm
Madam
going to
Chair.
close. Thank you. I'm going to close out this agenda item. And we will go to agenda item 10. Discussion and possible appointment of working groups to consider specific issues related to criminal justice information sharing. So I want to discuss tasks that could potentially be assigned to the working groups by the chair of the subcommittee before we discuss who those viable members could be of the Northern and Southern working groups. Historically, we've utilized those two working groups to task them with overview of the current Nevada criminal justice information system's functionalities, what it offers, what it doesn't offer, how well it works for the users, how well it interfaces or provides or shares or allows entry into information regarding criminal justice information in the state of Nevada. And so you're going to be hearing a presentation later on by Julie Ornelas regarding the NCJIS modernization efforts that are currently taking place. Because we are modernizing our systems, this is really when our division requires some input, participation, feedback, testing, training, like a train the trainer scenario, by utilizing the Northern and Southern working groups to do these things. So I, as the chair currently of the subcommittee, would probably task the Northern and Southern working groups with assisting the NCJIS Modernization Program Management Office and all of its staff with the efforts surrounding the modernization of our system. They also will be reviewing forthcoming topic papers, discussing criminal justice information sharing in Nevada, and providing recommendations on potential improvements at the next meeting, which could also include recommendations to the ACAJ in our report when we present that in November. Based on the tasks that would be assigned to these working groups, do any of the members have suggestions on membership of these working groups? Who do you feel would be most viable for serving on the Northern and Southern working groups? Any suggestions? Either from your respective agency or other agencies? So I'll give a little bit more background for ease of hopefully coming up with some suggestions. Is previously the membership of the Northern and Southern working groups were made up of our terminal agency coordinators and assistant terminal agency coordinators within our criminal justice agencies that utilize our state and federal and NLETS systems for the purposes of criminal justice missions. And then again, as Mr. Olmstead stated, we utilize civil agencies for input and feedback on the civil use of criminal justice data. So it can be a criminal justice agency, and it can also include civil agencies that utilize our information for civil purposes. Does that help come up with any ideas on membership, suggested membership for the Northern and Southern?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Although I don't have specific names in mind, I do think that we certainly need to have a combination of tax, ATAX in there. They're the best people that should have the most knowledge about the systems in both civil and the criminal side. But as well as, although DPS will have some IT support there, I think that some of those agencies, whether it be Washoe or Clark County, could put in some IT resources that would help get us perspective from the agency side of what may be impacted on their side.
Thank you, Vice Chair. That's an excellent suggestion. So that your brains don't hurt too much today, what I can offer up to you is that we here at my division can send out a mass email to all of the tax, ATAX, and as well as what's called a LASSO. It's the local agency security officer. They're responsible. Usually that LASSO is an IT related position within the agency. We can send out a mass email to all of those users and also to some of our civil account holders as well to request some volunteers for membership to sit on the Northern and Southern working groups. Would you prefer that I just do that?
Madam Chair, Fred Olmsted here. The civil person. I've been very quiet because if you look at the next agenda item is the modernization, and I watched that presentation earlier, and golly, there's a lot of money that's being requested, and I feel not petty, but I feel like a small voice saying, golly, if we don't get better civil access to criminal history record information, people can't get licensed, people can't go to work. Those arguments sound small to me when the police officer and the district attorney and the public defender can't get access to the system. Especially when, and we'll talk about it at the next agenda item, these are state laws. The governor could probably, finding an emergency, waive those state laws, but that wouldn't waive the accessibility of the police officers in the field. So I feel like I'm just here to help, as they say. But if you think a civil representative would aid Group North, Group South, heck yeah, I'm in the North. And if you want somebody from civil in the South, it's a small world. I'll pick up the phone. I'll get somebody that has an office down there to participate in the Group South, and we'll present our opinions and recommendations and requests, and we'll do the best we can. If you think we can help, then we're all in.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And yes, you would be very helpful. So I will mark you down as a member of the Northern Working Group. And I will go ahead and ask staff to send out, I'll draft a request for volunteers to be sent to the tax, ATAX, the LASSOs, the local agency security officers, which is normally IT, and then some of our civil account holders as well, to request volunteers to sit on both the Northern and the Southern. And in the meantime, Mr. Olmsted, if you want to figure out who you would like to suggest for the South and provide that name and contact information for me, I would greatly appreciate that.
Done and done. No worries about that. A lot of people down South, they're eager to serve, eager to help. I'll get you somebody.
Thank you so much. LCB Legal, do we need to take a vote on me sending out the email to the TAC and ATAC and all those people requesting volunteers?
Madam Chair, the statute says you shall appoint the members, so you do not need to take a vote.
Okay, wonderful. Then I will just send out an email requesting members. Hopefully I get good volunteers, and then I will be sure to let everyone know who those volunteers and the membership is of the Northern and Southern working groups when we get there. Thank you so much for that.
Madam
Yes.
Chair, this is Jennifer Noble. I'm sorry. Would it be possible for the members to be CC'd on that email that you described? My issue here is that I can think of several folks in my office that might be able to contribute, but I'm not sure what their availability is. So I'd like to sort of follow the correspondence that's sent out and then maybe check in with them in terms of their service to the committee.
Absolutely, you bet. And that's a great suggestion. I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, suggestions, concerns on that agenda item 10 regarding the working groups and the tasks of the working groups? Any input as to the tasks? Keeping within the statute as to what working
Hi,
groups?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
This is Heather Polaski.
Hi.
Hello. So on this item, I'm still the chair of the Southern Working Group as far as I know. So is there anything that you want me to do on my side? I know we have lost a few members this year, so we're desperately in need of some additional members. But if there's something that you would like me to do, I'm perfectly happy to do that.
Thank you for offering that up. I'll be sure to think about that and reach out to you directly. Otherwise, I would just say, look for the email that we're going to send out to the tax A, tax lassos, and civils. And I'll be sure to include in that correspondence the statute that creates the working groups, the tasks that can be assigned to them and that I will be assigning to them, so that decision can be, an informed decision can be made as to who a viable candidate would be to nominate to place on those working groups.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Any other comments on that agenda item?
Madam Chair, Steve Gerson. Are you asking for task topics?
Sure. What would you suggest would be some tasks for the working groups, keeping within the statute?
Keeping within the statute. Research for specialty courts. Recidivism. And minor guardianship or guardianship investigations.
Okay. Let me refer back to the statute on that, make sure it's not outside of the scope of the responsibilities of working group tasks. And if there's going to be an issue with that, then I'll be sure to let the membership know.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. And then I may, can you expand a little bit more on what that would look like as far as research for specialty courts?
So, for example, right now, Clark County in the district court has 1,000 specialty court participants. When they either complete or complete treatment, the best definition of recidivism is a return to the criminal justice system. And the best way to measure that is to be able to do a backgrounds to measure how well treatment is working on a group of specialty court participants. Well, you can imagine over the years, we would love to do longitudinal studies, but we have over probably 30,000 participants or former participants. And it's a rich treasure trove of policy and research for our state. I believe the legislature requires the Supreme Court or the state courts to report on recidivism, but it's extraordinarily difficult because it's generally, if you can get approval, it's manual. So I'm hoping that in your next version of the system, we can somehow find an integrated relationship from the justice system to your system to an integration for research on recidivism.
Thank you. And I agree. And I've been hearing that a lot throughout my years from various people in the criminal justice agency arena. That is very difficult to measure, and data throughout the state may not be captured consistently, with a uniform standards. So if we could, when we get to agenda item 13, we could discuss that a little bit further and talk about perhaps drafting and adopting standards for data collection, reporting, maintenance, and because I know that that's been an issue for years to try to determine and measure recidivism. So when we get to 13, I'll make a note to go back to that and we can discuss a little bit further.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anything else on agenda item 10 with the working groups and their tasks? All right. We're going to go ahead and move forward to agenda item 11, presentation on the Nevada Criminal Justice Information System Modernization Program. We have with us today Julie Ornelas with the Records, Communications, and Compliance Division with the Department of Public Safety as the program administrator for the modernization effort to present this to you. Ms. Ornelas, when you're ready, unmute and go ahead, share your screen and begin.
Okay. Good afternoon. Can you see me? There we are. Good afternoon, Chair McKay and members of the subcommittee. For the record, my name is Julie Ornelas, and I am the program administrator for the NCJIS Modernization Program. And as Mindy McKay, or Chair McKay formerly indicated, I work for the Nevada Department of Public Safety, Records, Communications, and Compliance Division. I am very pleased to be here today to present information on the NCJIS Modernization Program and answer any questions that you have. I did hear Mr. Olmsted say he saw the previous presentation, and I do want to say that I had to cut this one down quite a bit just to reduce the time, but you can certainly ask me any questions that you need to. So now I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Coming up. Come on, there we go. Okay, from the beginning. Okay, so again, I'm here today to present information on the Nevada Criminal Justice Information System. We call it NCJIS Modernization Program. Again, I am the program administrator. So the Nevada Criminal Justice Information System is comprised of a message switch system, also known as Justice Link. It's the central highway for criminal justice information sharing for Nevada's 337 criminal justice agencies, with approximately 15,000 users statewide, in addition to criminal justice agencies nationwide. The system is used to obtain criminal justice information for criminal investigations, intelligence, arrests, prosecution, sentencing, record seals, parole, probation, supervision, and detention centers. It also includes our hot files. We have Nevada hot files, which are comprised of our warrants, protection orders. We have a Department of Motor Vehicle interface, registered sex offender, parole and probation, CCWs, NOT codes, Nevada offense codes that you heard about earlier, and the criminal history records. We also access through our switch the national hot files, which are very important to the state. So it's warrants, protection orders, DMV records, registered sex offender, parole and probation, CCWs. We can also access stolen vehicles, guns, boats, etc., securities, gang information, terrorists, criminal history, among all the other items listed there. I don't want to, death by slide here. We also access through switch very critical information through what's called SCOPE. Again, that's the Las Vegas shared computer operation system. We get a lot of historical details that we don't necessarily have in our system because, the repository wasn't created until like the mid 80s. So they have a lot of historical details that we don't capture. So very valuable there. We also use the switch to access NLITS, which is the International Justice and Public Safety Information Sharing Network. And so that's a direct query to other states' information. And they also can query our system through that NLITS. So very valuable. One of the other really critical parts of our business, which has been touched on a little bit in today's discussions, are our civil background applications. Again, we support our civil fingerprint-based background checks that are, they're required by state statute or federal authority. They're for employment, licensing, volunteer, adoption, foster care, child care, CCW permits, just a few, to name there. We have others. We'd have to go on and on. We have over 100 and some statutes that require fingerprint-based background checks. We also support the background checks of the Brady point of contact firearms. So those are the NICS backgrounds. So the firearm background checks that the gun dealers that right now they call in and do backgrounds for purchases, redemptions for firearms. So again, very critical. We also have the civil name check for employment and volunteer. Those are backgrounds that are required by statute or they may be authorized by federal. So it's a system that we have. So this slide represents just a little bit of data or statistics just to show you how critical the system is and the number of types of transactions that pass through this switch and all the other critical justice systems. So on the left-hand side, we have the Justice Link and the NLITS transactions, which are used for the criminal justice side. So those are typically, again, the criminal history queries through the system, DMV, all the different things that I've listed. And we have over 85 million Justice Link transactions in 2019. And then within that left-hand box, we also have about 4 million of the NLITS transactions, which is us sharing or someone requesting that national back and forth of that sharing of information. Again, very critical. On the right-hand side is our civil background checks process, and I have those broken down. Again, this is 2019 data. It increases every year. And especially when we're talking the point of contact firearm backgrounds, those have just gone through the roof since COVID. But as of 2019, we did 102,392 firearms background checks. And in the middle box, that's the civil fingerprint background checks that are required or authorized by statute. So those are those state laws, again, or federal authorities. Again, for the schools, the nursing licenses, childcare, all those things are in that bucket. And then on the right-hand side of that box there, we have the civil name check backgrounds, and that's the 51,390. So again, very critical, equally as critical for our civil, type programs. So very, very valuable system and processes. So just a little bit about the modernization and overview about that. So we haven't broken down into two categories. So there's the replacement side, and then there's some enhancements that I wanted to kind of talk about. So the replacement of several complex criminal justice systems. So again, the switch, the message switch, as we call it, the hot files that we talked about, the computerized criminal history system, which is where those disposition codes and that Allison presented on, be contained within that system. So again, if we can't get that functionality now, we could definitely look at getting that in the computerized criminal history system through the modernization. And then we're also replacing all of our civil background applications, again, for volunteering, licensing firearms, the point of contact backgrounds, and the civil name check. So all those are going to be new modules with a lot of valuable enhancements that we currently do not have. The enhancements in functionality would be, we're going to implement a new enterprise content management system. Right now, everything we do is very manual. A lot of paper pushing back and forth, through the different processes internally, and also to our customers. We're going to be able to scan, documents coming in can be attached to files and build that kind of repository of information. For example, like on a gun background, information coming in that on research we'll be able to attach, character recognition and attach to the file. So those are some of the wonderful things that the content management will bring. We're also going to have a new portal to improve efficiency and effectiveness for our civil and criminal justice partners. On the civil side, one of the things that we are really, really excited about for the fingerprint side is right now we have to manually compare a fingerprint. We take the fingerprint results that are idented and we run a response based on that identification. And we also get that information from the FBI, and everything has to be manually matched and triple and quadruple verified. And then it's mailed out to our customers for their background checks. With this new portal, our customers will be able to actually retrieve their results through the portal. So again, rather than mailing time and matching time, it's going to automatically queue it up into a secured portal for access for our what we call authorized recipients. So that's another very exciting functionality that we're adding. And then the last thing that I really wanted to touch on too was the new solutions that we're going to be putting in place with this current technology, and other states use it. A lot of other states are using some of this technology that we're bringing on board. It's really highly configurable to accommodate additional functionality based on new state laws or amended laws or federal mandates. Right now, when we get new, transaction types or transaction codes, or even those disposition codes we were talking about, they're usually hard coded in, and it takes extra technology, effort, and cost. Of course, that's time and money to implement those new codes. And with this these new solutions, you can configure those. An administrator can go in and add, new functionality types. And so we're really excited about that. It's a time saver. Our ability to meet those mandates and state law changes or new laws are going to be a lot quicker than what we can do right now. So that's really going to be exciting. So I wanted to give a little bit more of an efficiency example. I touched a little bit on the civil fingerprint background checks, and again, the processing of the manual responses and mailing, which would save, we won't have that anymore. We'll save on time, and we will save on postage and that type of thing. I wanted to talk a little bit about another example of an efficiency for the Brady point of contact firearm, which is the gun dealers. Right now, it's like a call center. We have a call center structure. The calls come in, we have people that take the calls, and it's really labor intensive. And it leads to very long hold times for the gun dealers. And there's a lot of frustration that happens there. And especially with the volume going out the window right now, they sit on hold sometimes for, an hour. I mean, we get complaints about that, and we do the best that we can with the staff. And so again, that's a really labor intensive process. And also we don't have what's called a lights out process. Everybody that needs a background has to call and sit on the phone. And once we do their background and their transactions, and if we find out they have no criminal history, they are proceed. Well, they've still spent that time sitting on the telephone, even just to hear that person has, no disqualifiers and they can be a proceed. And I'm going to take a drink. So what's exciting about our future process is rather than the gun dealers actually sitting on the telephone, kind of like our civil fingerprint processors, these guys can go ahead and log into the portal. They can enter their background check request for their patrons that want to purchase or redeem a firearm, and they can go in and enter all that information into the portal. And then it goes into a queue on our side, and it runs through the different files that it needs to do for the backgrounds. And if that person has no criminal history or any disqualifiers, they may have something, it might not be a disqualifier. We have that what's called a lights out process. So what that would do is it within just seconds, it would return that back to the gun dealer, and they would see a proceed for that individual, and they'd be in and out of the store in no time. And again, they'll get those responses right back through this portal rather than having to sit on the phone and have somebody do the transaction and then, give them those results. So again, we're very excited about that for our customers, but also internally. Some of the risks of doing nothing with the current system that we have, the system is getting very old and deprecated. But more importantly, Norsoft Consulting, they're our current vendor, and they provide the proprietary NCGIS system. So it's their code. And they notified us 2 years ago of their intent to retire within the 2 to 5 years. So we are really on borrowed time. We've looked at other options, for someone to take over this code and system, but again, it's their code. It's definitely special to them. And portions of that code are nearing end of life and will become unsupported. EATS, which is our current enterprise information technology services, they're not really in a position to support or maintain the proprietary code base. So we've looked at that. We've had them analyze it. It's just not a good option. Also, their testing environment, the EATS testing environment, is inadequate to support the critical nature of NCGIS as a whole. And really, we experienced this. This issue became evident when we tried to upgrade our NCGIS environment in fiscal year 2017. For those of you that may have been here during that time and were using our system during that time, the upgrade, which was supposed to be a very simple thing, resulted in hundreds of defects once we deployed it and 5 weeks of outages. And we were not able to roll it back once we rolled it out. We had to work through all the issues. It was very frustrating for our customers and for us internally. So again, if we do nothing, DPS will fall behind in our ability to meet federal and state mandates and its customers' needs. Again, we have an ever-changing environment. We're not stagnant. It's always fluid. There's always state laws that change and add new background types or, new transaction types. Or there's federal requirements that the FBI sends our way, or NICS, and certain types of functionality that we need to implement. And it's not easy to do in our current system. So with the ability to configure more easily in our new system will make it a little bit less painful. Also, the state of Nevada will become non-compliant with the Presidential Fixed NICS Act. Again, there's a federal mandate that states improve on their information sharing for the NICS backgrounds, the Brady backgrounds. And so, our ability to have better technology to do that sharing and access to better information, it all has to come through this modernization. So a little bit more information on the risks. Again, if we do nothing, it's a high risk of failure with catastrophic consequences. When Norsoft retires in 3 years or less, the system may be shut down. Again, we don't own that. We don't own that system. It is their system, and we don't have any other alternatives that we've been able to identify. If the state's left without a system, the entire nation will be left in the dark and unable to perform the responsibilities of their job or meet mandates. It's a huge officer in public safety. Again, we share and pass information back and forth with other states daily. You saw the number of transactions along with our internal, processes through sharing of criminal history internally to this state. If purchased, it would take EATS months, if not years, to learn how to properly maintain that system. Again, the code is not that easy to follow. In the meantime, the system could become end of life and thus unsupported, and we would have no way to update the system and meet the federal mandates or state statute requirements. The state could experience a full or partial system failure without regular maintenance. Again, there wouldn't be anybody to maintain it. Even if we were to, by some luck, get our hands on it, or if we tried to purchase it, there's just nobody to maintain it. And if the state experienced a full or partial system failure, the state criminal justice agencies will have no means to search the system to obtain information for those criminal investigations, again, intelligence, arrest, prosecution, all of the things that we all need to do our jobs every day and for our public and officer safety. So if the current system fails, we'll lose all ability to process any of the civil backgrounds. Again, that's a huge part of our business too, and a huge part of public safety. As you can imagine, without having, a fingerprint-based background check on someone that is caring, in a nursing facility, hospital, if we haven't backgrounded those individuals or, for adoption or foster, having access to those vulnerable populations, again, we wouldn't be able to process any of those fingerprint-based background checks without this system. Point of contact firearms, same thing. All the files that we hit to complete those backgrounds, to make those determinations, for the safety of the public, that would no longer exist. We wouldn't be able to do it. Our name-based background checks, as required by NRS for employment and volunteer, we would not be able to complete those. Again, those are a lot of times done for like our hotels, casinos and hotels and valet parking, those types of things. They're taking your vehicles, and parking your cars. And so they do those name-based background checks, to know that you're in safe hands. So those would be out the window. Our sex offender registrations for state and FBI, we do a lot of research to determine, what frequency of duration of registration for our sex offenders. We look at their backgrounds and their information. Without the system, we wouldn't have access to that information. So I want to talk a little bit about funding. It is, it's never a low cost effort when you modernize, and these systems definitely, are out of date and need a lot of work. And so the Modernization Program is a 3 biennium multi-project implementation. We did get funding through Senate Bill 514 during the 2019 session. And so again, we got an appropriation of $7 million in the general fund, and we were authorized to use $7 million of our division reserves in the 2019 and through the 2021 biennium. Sorry, I got a tickle. Again, the program is funding for each of the next 2 biennia. It's not a small dollar amount by any means. So we would need about $40 million to get it fully implemented with all of the replacements and the improvements or enhancements that I've talked about. Let me get a drink here. And it would be necessary to get general fund appropriation to support this effort. Our reserves just cannot carry this forward. This is a little bit of a breakdown or a snapshot, if you will, kind of the costs of the different bienniums. And so just wanted to show a little bit of information on that. Again, the 14 million, approximately 14,382,168 in the 19 to 21. And then in the 21 to 23, it equates out to 22,787,815. And these are the projected amounts, that we've projected out for full implementation. And then again, 23 to 25 is a little over another 20 million. So I want to talk a little bit. This last slide is really a very important point. And I touched on it a little bit of what happened to us in 2017. We did an upgrade, and in the upgrade, we could not roll back. And I'm so sorry. I'm having really bad allergies today. So in 2017, we could not roll back once we went forward. And basically we have the same thing here. Once we go, we need to go. The transition, once we start to the new applications and cloud storage, it would be very difficult to roll back. And I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. So in a nutshell here, it is very critical that once we go forward, we have the continued funding so we can move this all the way through to 2025. And thank you, and I'm so sorry, I am losing my voice. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm here to answer questions if you have them.
Thank you, Ms. Ornelas. I'll try to help you with that too, so you don't have to talk anymore. So I appreciate that. Wow, it's a lot of information. So what does everybody think? Members, questions, concerns, comments, modernization?
So I need to unshare. Did I unshare?
It looks like you did.
Okay,
Madam
good.
Chair,
Yes.
Brett Olmsted. Yeah, wow, $40 million. That is what we saw earlier at the ACAJ. For those of us on the subcommittee, that was the last interim, I believe we heard $50 million. As a member and representing the civil people, do I have some requests? Heck yeah. I wouldn't mind RAP back, which is a electronic notification for those that send it out. At the board nursing, we take electronic live scan, we send it out, and we get mail back. A piece of mail. What? How come we can't get it electronically? Yeah, that's going to cost you money. So when we hear $40 million, we don't want to screw anything up. We don't want to say, well, it's $40 million for the good stuff, but yeah, the civil stuff on there, it'd be 42, 43. So I don't want to raise, on behalf of the state of Nevada as a concerned citizen, I don't want to raise the funding amount. Do I want some stuff civilly? Heck yeah. Could it go better? Heck yeah. But I'd settle for a functioning system. And so I think we should concentrate on that. And that's why I'm not bringing forward suggestions that might increase the cost. I will say that if we have to go, or somebody has to go to get general fund money, and this might be an agenda item later on, who is going to go ask and especially during COVID times, the casinos were closed, revenues way down all across the state. Where are they going to find $40 million? Members of this subcommittee have power. We have representation. We know what's going on. We can make a good pitch subcommittee that wants money, that would give us money. And if you think it's worth mentioning to anybody at all about, it might not be the strongest argument, but it would be a decent argument that the civil functions of criminal history, record information, the CGIS, civil is important. I'd be happy to make a presentation to anybody that would listen that without a modern system, these things would happen and it would be bad. And I'm happy to help testify to anybody, any subcommittee, whatever we think is appropriate for this small argument on a matter of modernization. Thanks.
Mr. Olmsted, this is Julie Ornelas. And just to let you know, RATBAC, the national level RATBAC is going to be part of the modernization also. It's included in that entire program.
Woo! Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm sorry I'm losing my voice, you guys. I am having horrible allergies. So
that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and jump in. And so, Mr. Olmsted, with respect to your comment regarding how people can support this effort, it could look like, for example, letters of support to the money committees during session. It could look like letters of support to our chain of command here at the Department of Public Safety, leading all the way up to the governor's office. It could look like public comment during interim finance committees. We are required to provide a letter of intent every quarter to the IFC regarding the status of the modernization effort, which includes not only what's being worked on, but whether we're in scope, on time, within the budget. So it includes all of that information every quarter at the IFC. We did just meet with the IFC in August with the quarter that covered July through September. It is on the agenda again for this coming Thursday's October 22nd IFC. I don't know if that was an error or if they have more questions they would like on the record. We also have a work program at this IFC to finish the spending of the $7 million in authorization that was funded to us last session out of our own reserves. So to go to your point regarding the cost of it, you've heard different numbers, and the reason is probably because the overall cost of the program from start to finish is approximately 50 something million dollars. We were authorized in 2019, 7 million to spend out of our reserves, and we were appropriated 7 million in Senate Bill 514 out of general fund. So that's 14 million right there. And then what we presented today is an additional 40 million on top of that. And of course, anything IT, there could always be unknowns that we weren't prepared for that would cost money as well. So I hope that kind of clears up the cost of it and the different numbers that you've heard. But as far as support to ensure that the functionality that both the criminal justice agencies would like to see, as well as our civil partners would like to see, you could go to the table during IFC. You could go to the table during session. You can submit letters of support to the various bodies that make these funding decisions. You could sit with us in the audience and we can show that we're locking arms and we're in this together, and that would show that we are partners in this and you're stakeholders in the system that we are modernizing. So we're all in this together. It could look like that in my mind. So I hope that kind of clears up your comment about the money and provides you some suggestions on how to support from your angle going forward and getting the funding for this, because it is really important.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. But this is, we're venturing into the world of politics where we have to sit and ask for money. And I'm an idea guy, and I got some great ideas, but I've got co-general counsel down in Las Vegas, Kim Arguello, and she's tired of saying, well, what Olmsted really meant was. So I've got ideas, but people have to say, good idea, Olmsted, come up and testify, or no, that's not a good argument, sit down there and shut up. So it'll go higher than my pay grade to say, Olmsted, I need you to do this. This is a good argument. This is what we want you to say, and I'll do it. But if it's not a good argument, even though I think it's swell, no worries, sit down, shut up, and let us do our job and don't need to talk. And I'd be happy with that.
Understood. Thank you.
You bet.
So I would just encourage everyone to look at the agenda items for IFC every time an agenda comes out for IFC to see if our letter of intent is on there. If you're interested in watching, if they call us to testify. Evie, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman. I just wanted to ask two questions. Does the chart with the estimated cost from slide 11, does that include any savings that are going to be seen from reducing the call center or any of these other roles that it sounds like are done in person? So basically salary savings or anything like that. Does that chart include those savings? And if not, that might be really helpful to have that information to show, not only that it's going to cost money, but that over the long run, it will actually save some funds there. So that was my first question. And then my second question is, I would just be curious to know what other states have done or what they're doing to address this issue as well. It might also help the argument that it's inevitable. It's going to have to be done at some point.
So Julie Ornelas for the record. We have what we call time studies to kind of baseline some of our processes. And we have looked at some of those savings, like for the point of contact firearms background unit. We've looked at what the phone bill costs us just to, man that 800 call center, because they come in on an 800 line. And then we've looked at, the time savings for the staff members. But for us to compile it fully, we would need to look at the savings all the way across and come up with that number. And we have not been able to do that yet, but that's a very good suggestion, at least to present that, as we're going forward with the money request. So thank you for that. And as far as other states, the programs and the modules that we are, implementing through the modernization, Oregon and Pennsylvania are some that come to mind, that have recently done implementations using a lot of these modern services that we're going to, and they have had, nothing but good, good things to say. And even through like our RFP process, we got, testimony or feedback, if you will, through the RFP, almost like an interview where they had to answer, their experience, if it was a good, good experience, and if the services provided what they were looking for. And we got no indication that anybody was unhappy. They were very happy with the improvements that they received from like the portal and some of the different modules and the configurability based on old hard-coded systems. So yeah, this is the way that a lot of states are going. So we did our homework through, some of those front end processes. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Good questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Members, any other comments, questions, concerns, suggestions?
Madam Chair, Steve Gerson.
Yes.
So modernization, you've already put out an RFP, you've already selected out of the box or a vendor to build a new one. What does modernization actually mean?
So Julie Ornelas for the record. So we did do an RFP, a very extensive one for our technical side, which is, our infrastructure and all that, and our functionality through the different, again, the portal and the different modules. And a lot of it is basically off the shelf. We call it, COTS, custom off the shelf, or GOTS, government off the shelf. So for example, one of the states, we basically are going to use some of their code that they use, because again, firearms background checks are firearms background checks. I mean, we have to follow the Brady law. It's not something that we're reinventing the wheel. So some of these states have already, given us either part of their code that they're using, and we are just basically implementing that through our modernization. But there's not a lot of like in-house development like our current system. It's all in-house coded, customized to us. We don't have that. A lot of this is standard that other states are using. Even the civil background checks for fingerprints, other states do those. We're not the only ones that do them. We're not the only states that use the message switch that we're going with. Other states use that message switch, the same message switch to communicate both internally with their state for public and officer safety, and also, through inlets. So none of this is like brand new technology. So there's not a lot of risk to it if kind of that's what you're, worrying about. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, there's just not one system that's done this for other states.
Well, the criminal modernization is comprised of multiple, again, the switch, the CCH, all the civil applications, they're all modules or applications or databases that we're replacing. They're all becoming aged, and they need to be, replaced. So there are states that have done every single one that we're doing, and then some of the states have done, some have done the civil side, and another state has done the same functionality on the switch side. But we're taking it and comprising it all to fit. And one of the things that we didn't talk about that I want you guys to understand is our current system, our message switch, is supposed to be just a highway of information. That's all it's supposed to do, is share information. our current vendor actually coded applications inside of it. So all of our civil applications are intertwined inside of it. So it's not like we can just pull that application out and plop it into to talk to this new switch. This code is like a spaghetti bowl. Again, it is their proprietary code. And so we are basically going with a decoupled approach where each application or module, the civil side, the CCH, and the switch are all going to be standalone, talking to each other and passing information back and forth. So there's not the risk that we have now with this intertwined system with our new approach, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. Any other comments, questions, concerns, suggestions? Mr. Stephanie got kicked off. He's trying to get back on, just so everyone knows.
I'm back on, so.
Good. Welcome back.
Chair.
Yes.
Robert Quick for the record. So are any of these applications, are we looking to move towards a cloud-based solution for any of these? Or are we still looking at all in-house housing of the databases and hardware?
Julie Ornelas for the record. We're actually using Azure Cloud, Microsoft Cloud. So we're no longer going to have hardware, servers and storage. So everything's going to be in the cloud and scalable. As server space on a piece of hardware is very expensive to, increase that space and manage. Whereas with the Azure Cloud, the scalability is a lot easier. And again, we'll have two basically backup sites. I believe it was Texas and Arizona for, failover. So hopefully no interruption of services. The way I'm not an expert on cloud, but based on my understanding and everything I'm learning about it, it's going to be very stable and scalable.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good question. Any other questions, comments, concerns, suggestions?
Mindy, this is Rick Stephanie.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know we have a meeting to talk this week about stuff, but what is the time frame of the new message switch? Do you have a time frame? I mean, because we're going to have to convert all of our stuff as well.
Julie Ornelas for the record. So I don't have the schedule right in front of me. I mean, the full implementation is going to be, we're looking at 2024 for full implementation. As far as where the actual switch lives and that, right now we're doing all the infrastructure and, laying the circuits and that type of thing. But one of the things that I did want to share is we understand the lift it's going to be on, our criminal justice partners for their connections and redoing connections. And based on what I've understood from our technical team is the Unisys, who is our service provider, they do have a way to take your current connection and do some translation on our side where you don't have to change how you're connecting right now. You could build in your budget how, to move yourself over to, a more upgraded connection in the future. But again, we understand that, not all criminal justice partners have the ability, to make that transition right away. And so we're actually starting our outreach this month. We're doing launch letters, and then we're going to start working with all the different criminal justice agencies and change ambassadors. And Rick, you guys will definitely be part of our, core team because you're such a important partner to us. And then we'll start working through the working groups and everything and just really see where everybody kind of falls in that transition of their connections and kind of make a plan for each partner. So it's not something that I think you're going to have to just do on the fly by any means. Does that make sense?
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing nothing else, I would just suggest you keep this in the back of your mind when we get to agenda item 13. We do only have 4 agenda items left. We've been at this for 2 hours, so I'm going to give us a break. It is currently 3 o'clock, and Ms. Ornelas, thank you so much for your presentation and being available today. And
You're welcome.
I'm going to go ahead and give us a break and be back at 3:10 p.m., please.
Thank you, Ms. McKay.
Thank you. Do I have everyone back? It is 3:10 p.m.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
This is Heather Polaski. I am back. Thank you for the break.
Thank you. You're welcome. Okay, I think if we've got everyone back, we can move forward. Next agenda item is 12. It's the presentation on the implementation of the National Incident-Based Reporting System, also known as Nibers. It is being presented today by Anya Hickox with the Records, Communications, and Compliance Division with Public Safety. Ms. Hickox, if you are ready, you can unmute and go ahead with your presentation.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and the members of the subcommittee. My name is Anya Hickox, and I am a Special Services Manager with the Department of Public Safety, Records, Communication, and Compliance Division. I'll be presenting you information about Nibers. Let me share my screen. Should do it. You should have PowerPoint in front of you so you can follow along. So let's start from the beginning. There are multiple statutes that govern the collecting and reporting of crime data. Those statutes are related to domestic violence, to protection orders, elderly abuse, crimes related to prejudice. There are also statutes that govern creation and duties of the central repository, as well as establish uniform crime reporting program that allows us to collect and report crime data for the state of Nevada. The first attempts to modernize the collection of crime data statistics took place in the 1980s. And for many years, states were slowly transitioning from summary reporting system, SRS for short, to Nibers, which is National Incident-Based Reporting System. However, that transition was taking place at much slower pace as anticipated. During that time, both systems were operating side by side until changing worlds and demands for more accurate data actually became necessary. And in 2015, the Criminal Justice Information Services, CJIS Advisory Board recommended that the UCR program move to Nibers only data collection and sunset SRS. This advice was approved by the FBI director, and the FBI requested that all agencies transition their reporting systems to Nibers. And the deadline given for this transition was January 1, 2021. So historically, agencies submitted data in summary format, which has its limitations. The significant limitation was that the summary format functioned based on the hierarchy rule, which meant that only the most severe crime was reported. And here we can see the difference between Nibers and SRS. So Nibers is incident focused. It reports all offenses within an incident, whereas SRS is offense focused, and as I mentioned, only reports the most severe crime. For Nibers, there's no hierarchy rule. For SRS, there is a hierarchy rule. Also, for Nibers, we can report up to 10 offenses, where for SRS, it was only one offense per incident, except arson and human trafficking. Nibers also represents crime against persons, property, and society. That was something that SRS, the part of crimes against society was not included. Nibers has 46 location types, where SRS has 8. And the very important part of Nibers is that it includes victim and offender data for all offenses, where SRS was only including that data for murder offenses. And there's also additional more property types available for Nibers than in SRS. It is important to note that the transition to Nibers may and most likely will appear to increase crime rate. The reason for that is, as I mentioned before, the hierarchy rule is no longer applies, and therefore there'll be more incidents, more offenses, reported for each incident. So, for example, in the scenario, during robbery, a victim was stabbed and as a result murdered. Reporting this crime using SRS would only report murder, as it is the most serious crime. Using Nibers would include both robbery and murder. So this example shows that Nibers gives us more information, a fuller picture of reality, but also may appear as the crime rate is higher. So the UCR program in Nevada is working in partnerships with 46 agencies. The list of agencies you can see in front of you, and it consists of all small to medium to very large agencies. These agencies have been working in partnership with UCR program for years in order to collect and report the most accurate crime data. And right now, those agencies are in process of transitioning to Nibers reporting. So the FBI partnered with the Bureau of Justice Statistics, BJS, to assist with grant funds to mediate some of the financial burdens of the transition. As a result, DPS was awarded a NCSX grant to receive Nibers certification for the state of Nevada and to assist agencies in their transitioning efforts. Agencies that were or still are part of this NCSX grant and the certification process are Reno Consortium, that consisted of Reno Police Department, Sparks PD, Washoe County SO, UNR PD, and Reno Municipal Court. Reno Consortium took part of state's Nibers certification process, and when Reno Consortium received certification, so did the state of Nevada. Another agency that is utilizing NCSX grant is, or was because they got certified, Mesquite Police Department. There's another group of agencies that we call them Sandwich Group, led by Lander County Police Department, that is in the process of transitioning and also is utilizing NCSX grant. And the newest addition to the grant is the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. Nibers is a long-coming transition, and it will not only make crime statistics more accurate, but also it will allow us to forego the manual process of using Excel spreadsheets to capture the data. Data after being put in Excel spreadsheet needed to be analyzed, checked for errors, translated using a translator provided by the FBI. And so it could be securely transmitted to the FBI. That was a very cumbersome process, as you can imagine. With Nibers, Excel spreadsheets will be replaced with electronic submissions of monthly files into a website located portal. to which agency has its own credentials and password and login, so they can securely upload data. It's worth mentioning over here that we have 3 websites operating currently. Test website where agencies can submit any test files, including test plan. So test site is a place where agencies can upload their initial files, check for any errors, any warnings. Then they can correct them and re-upload the file with the corrected version. We also have a certification site right now that is operational during certification process, and where agencies can upload their corrected files and use them as certification data. And we also have a production site. Production site is where the agencies submit their files after they receive certification. It is best advised as a best practice to use the test site even after certification to do that initial upload of the file, make sure there's as little errors as possible, and then proceed to the production side. We recommend it in order to maintain integrity and accuracy of the data on the production side. As of October 2020, these are the certified agencies. There are 17 agencies that completed transition to Nibers and received their certification. It is worth mentioning here that the agencies who do not have a high volume of incidents can use Incident Editor provided by the UCR program to manually input the incidents every month. So they're still reporting Nibers data to the FBI. Currently, agencies who report their crime data via Incident Editor are Reno Tahoe Airport and Washoe County School District. That is an option also. Incident Editor is an option also for the agencies that are having difficulties transitioning before the deadline of January 1, 2021. Those agencies would still need to be trained on how to input data using Incident Editor, but that is an option as well to temporarily submit Nibers data. Any agency that needs to utilize that portal may contact UCR program. We will provide resources and training so that every agency is ready and can submit Nibers data beginning January 1, 2021. And a little bit of an update of the recent events. The FBI surveyed all states early in spring of 2020. And based on the responses of the agencies of the states, determined that most of the states are still on track with their Nibers transition. Therefore, the deadline for Nibers transition remained the same, despite any challenges that we experienced with the COVID-19 pandemic. Since the January 1, 2021 deadline is just around the corner, and SRS will no longer be an option in less than 3 months, UCN program is working diligently to make sure that all the agencies are ready or at least aware of where they are in the process and what else needs to be accomplished. So the UCR team has been reaching out to the agencies, providing them with the important information and offering assistance. We also has been hosting monthly calls with each agency's RACs. RACs are reporting agency coordinators that have been assigned to work with the UCR team during Nibers transition efforts. And during monthly calls, the UCR team provided and still provides, because we're still having those calls, monthly updates, disseminates important information, and gives agencies opportunity to ask questions and provide immediate answers. It is worth mentioning here also that our annual report will be eventually discontinued Thus will require amendment to the NRS 179A, and that will not take place until appropriate legislative actions are taken. However, in place of that annual report, we will be providing an interactive portal that will give everyone, including the public, access to the most current data available and retrieve information that specifically interests them. In closing, I think it is important to put in the forefront the most important part, which is the goal for transitioning crime reporting agencies in Nevada to Nibers. And that goal is to provide a true, accurate, and complete picture of crime in Nevada. That concludes my presentation. The UCR team is excited for this transition and what it brings to the table in terms of functionality and accuracy on data. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. If you have any questions later, we can always be reached at our UCR email that hopefully you can see right now on the screen. So thank you very much, and I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hickox. I appreciate the presentation. Members, are there any questions, comments on this agenda item? Okay. This is about 20 years in the making, so it's a very historical event for Nevada. We are one of the last to transition, so it is exciting. Thank you for everyone's participation, support, and cooperation throughout this effort on that. If there are no questions or comments, I'll go ahead and close this agenda item out. Thank you again, Ms. Hickox.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, and we will move to agenda item 13, discussion of technical and operational issues related to the Nevada Criminal Justice Information System, the capabilities of NCJIS, and the development of new technologies, and possible direction to staff to prepare a report of the Subcommittee on Criminal Justice Information Sharing to be submitted to the Advisory Commission on the Administration of Justice. We've talked about a few ideas throughout this meeting. I'm going to open it up to membership first before I provide any feedback on this item. Any members have suggestions on what to put into the report for the ACAJ meeting in November regarding criminal justice information sharing? Mr. Grierson, I'm going to go back to your suggested research for specialty courts and recidivism. Suggest improved criminal justice information sharing with integration or integrated relationships is how you put it, between the NCJIS, the state system here in my division, and the criminal justice agencies to attempt to capture and report data that would improve in providing recidivism information. Is that correct?
Perfectly stated.
Phew, okay, good, thank you. Would you like that to be placed in the report to the ACAJ?
Yes, please.
Okay. And I'm going to go back to the NOC working group agenda item presentation, whereas there were a few recommendations from the NOC working group specific to amending statutes 453.336 and 179A.070 to fix some of the offense issues with respect to criminal justice information sharing, making sure that we're sharing the information that should be retained, filling in gaps where some marijuana offense penalties lack. So I'm going to go ahead and include that possibly in the report if y'all want to vote on that when we get to that point. So I recall that from earlier in the meeting. Any other comments or suggestions for the report?
Madam Chair, this is Jennifer Noble, and I'm not sure if this is quite appropriate, but I just wanted to say that, my understanding of what you do is limited. There's a lot of technical aspects to it, but I was happy to be part of the subcommittee last interim session. One of the things during that subcommittee that I came to understand is that even if my agency, the Washoe County District Attorney's Office, were able to report almost in real time how a case was developing in terms of like what charges were dismissed or amended, et cetera, that even if we were able to communicate that to you, that there just wasn't enough. There were so many changes during a given month. I think we counted thousands of changes to our charging documents that the existing system couldn't accept them or wouldn't be able to take them in. So for lack of a better term, that seemed to be something that the ACAJ was interested in last session. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense to everyone, but I think you may know what I'm talking about. So in other words, I think it's important to courts and other stakeholders that the system reflects what's happening in a case as it's happening. And with the existing system, we're just not able to do that.
So having integration again, maybe going back to that term that was used by Mr. Grierson earlier, we also refer them to them as interfaces. Having something interactive such as an electronic interface to go back and forth with information, we could consider looking at how that would work. Is that along the same lines?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I mean that if that's information that the ACAJ wants tracked, which that has been my impression for some time, and with our existing criminal justice information software that we use, we're able to track it. But yeah, it's the whole issue of interface. How do we communicate that to the system that's being used by Nevada? Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, and it's a bigger picture. You're one agency. And I don't know how many prosecutorial systems there are. I don't know if all prosecutors in the state use one system. I don't think they do. Don't quote me on that. But having multiple interfaces becomes very difficult to manage, and there has to be a standard technological specification by which each system would have to conform with in order to accurately transmit the proper data, which was going to be one of my suggestions in my spiel when we get there. So I can say it again when I get to my suggestions regarding having a statewide tech spec for the conformity and ease of information sharing. Would that be along the lines of what you're talking about, Ms. Noble?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. And as usual, you put it much more succinctly and clearly than I did.
Thank you. Okay, wonderful. Any other members have questions or, well, comments and suggestions, recommendations for the ACAJ report?
Madam Chair, Steve Gerson again.
Yes, sir.
Along the lines of Jennifer's statement, so do each of the requirements for each of the applications that you're putting together in a COTS or GOTS way, do each of them provide APIs for all of us to work into your systems?
That is a great question that I can get an answer for you. Unless Julie's still on the line, she could try to answer that if she's still on there.
Julie Ornelas for the record. So right now, when you're talking about APIs, are you talking about technical specifications? I don't know that that's the word I've ever, APIs, I've not really heard of that. We call them tech specs. But, right now, all of the criminal justice agencies that the system, communicates with, they come in and communicate in various ways. We have active directories, VPNs, that type of thing. But the goal would be to provide, as Mindy said, technical specifications for them to upgrade their current connections eventually to a certain type to where everybody's standard coming in. So it would be a document that we would give and our technical team would work with the agency's technical team. So I'm not positive if that answered your question, but to Ms. Noble's point and to what Mindy was saying, you know, one of the things for the modernization that, you know, we would or could look at if you guys wanted to, you know, take up that topic is providing a standard technical specification that can talk to, interface and synchronize with our CCH system. We do have a little bit of that, and Mr. Stephanie is probably more up to speed on that than me because he's technical for AOC. We do communicate with AOC right now on, you know, electronic, you know, information. And so how that's done on the backside, I'm not as familiar with, but it's probably to a tech spec at this point of some sort.
Thank you, Julia. So I Googled API and its application programming interface. So I think it's the interface specifications. Mr. Gerson, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, do each of your modules have all of that API capability and the horsepower that APIs hold for integrations?
Julie Ornelas for the record. So the agencies would still talk to the switch and the switch would talk to the application. So you would still be talking to the switch and then through the switch to the various, you know, applications that you would need to talk to. So for example, yeah, you know, if your connection needed to kind of just talk to the CCH and dispositions or court information, then you would talk through the switch, would be that one API or you know, technical specification. It would go to the switch. The switch would go out and communicate with the CCH, either get the information or receive information and then give something back through that one channel. So you wouldn't have multiple interfaces with each application if that makes sense. The switch is the talking point.
All right, thank you.
Mindy, this is Rick. Mr.
Yes.
Gerson, just to let you know, the AOC currently has a system we call McGuigis, but you can call it anything you want. It's a data interchange system that uses documents, XML documents to exchange information with the repository, with DMV, with multiple courts, with multiple agencies across the state. We use the J-Link message switch to communicate with directly with the repository and DPS. So I'm assuming that's going to continue when they get the new system in, that we will be providing that same type of service. So
Yes,
I don't
sir.
know if they're going to, if the new DPS system would allow you to program directly into their databases using the API. I would be very surprised if it does.
Yeah, that's not the intention.
Yeah, I didn't think so. So we would have to use some sort of interface, some sort of middleware system that could move that data from your system into any other system. And it is difficult within the state because we do have so many different disparate case management systems in the courts. There's like 20 different systems by itself, and we get more every month. So if we could get, as we move forward, a standard document or specification on what has to be moved, that's the easy way to do it. But so, Steve, if you would like to talk more about our system and how we move data, I'd be more than happy to sit down with you.
Yeah, I mean, we've been here for 15 years trying to get our information into the switch. So, no, I'm good. I just was wondering if they have the horsepower to, on occasion, bring information into their system outside of the one switch. So, just curious.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, recommendations, suggestions for the report to the ACAJ? I do, so I'm going to go ahead with my commentary. Some challenges that I've seen over the years is the lack of uniformity in the data and how the data is provided to whomever, not just to us. The lack of automation. We are very paper-based, very manual process, I know here in my division. We lack, through outreach and education over the years, we've learned that a lot of agencies and staff within the agencies lack education as to the criminal justice system and its processes, specifically how one agency might impact other agencies' ability to perform their responsibilities, because we do all impact each other. So thinking of some of those challenges that I've mentioned, if you have any ideas on how to improve those areas, I'm all ears. And then again, I was going to go to my statement of what a statewide standard technical spec, tech spec for the criminal justice agency's IT vendors to conform to. Would that be helpful if we could come up with collectively a tech spec that we can all agree on that can then be provided that everybody is required to follow when either enhancing their systems, replacing their systems, modernizing our systems? That might help. And that also goes along with the statute, NRS 176.0125 sub 3. And also with our bylaws in section 3.4 regarding having a tech spec. So I wanted to make sure you understood that that's actually also supported in statute and the bylaws. Also, I wanted to suggest, would having an independent study conducted by an outside third party to assess our current process and recommend improvements be helpful, such as what the ACAJ brought in a few sessions ago with the Criminal Justice Institute when they performed the Justice Reinvestment Initiative, which is how Assembly Bill 236 was enacted. Would something like that be helpful if we could find a way to fund and bring in an outside entity to do a statewide criminal justice information study on the sharing and the processes? And then lastly, I was going to suggest or recommend that if the ACAJ is willing to submit a letter of support for the funding of NCJS modernization, that would be very helpful. Again, going back to my comment earlier regarding ways to support us with our requests for continued funding, since this is a multi-biennia project or program. So those were my comments and recommendations. Thoughts on all of those?
Mindy, this is Rick Stephanie. We can go a long way if we can get standardized data throughout the whole justice community. You know, I have some great stats people that work with us that would love to have input into that. So if you would like me to put you in touch with them, I would be more than happy to.
I appreciate that. What about, because I have, as the chair of the subcommittee, the chair has the ability to appoint working groups. We can have multiple working groups. What about appointing a working group or made up of agency representatives that are willing and pertinent to the feedback and the research on creating tech specs for statewide conformity? Would a working group be helpful?
I would think it would be, but so.
Ms. McKay, this is Julie Ornelas for the record. Can I add some comment here?
Sure.
So what I would like to just share a little bit real quick and then say something that pertains to the mod. It goes back to the Nibers presentation that Ms. Hickox provided. We had a really manual process with that, and all of our law enforcement agencies that submit crime statistics used to submit manually, and they all have different records management systems. I mean, across the state, we have multiple different types of systems. And we did get a tech spec from the FBI because they're the ones that mandated Nibers. And we had to provide that to all of the different agencies, and they had to code their RMS systems to meet this standard tech spec to receive that information electronically, receive those electronic files through that standard tech spec. So I liken it to that, and that's the approach that maybe we could try to aim for, to Mr. Stephanie's point of all that standard data. So for the modernization, if we were to create something like that, it would definitely help to have a working group that comes from, across the different types of entities coming together to agree on that standard to create that tech spec. So maybe through the modernization, we can work together, to get that data not only in real time, as Ms. Noble says, but synchronize it as changes happen, but that standardization needs to come from everybody coming together and talking about it. It sounds like, everybody has a different slice of this pie. We need to see the whole pie. So I think it can be done. I've seen it done, and I'd like to try to do that through the mod. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And thinking about working groups, to avoid having too many working groups, what do the members think about having this just be an additional task for the northern and southern working groups?
I mean, just Tom Wilson. I think that might be a good idea because, if you think about it, this charter really expires in 3 months. So how much time-wise do we have an opportunity and capacity to accomplish in just that, to have a report to the ACAJ with presentation so they can accept it in their public meeting and then incorporate that into whatever their final report is to the legislature. Right, so we have time for the subcommittees to meet, the working groups to meet. Then we have to agendize their reports, right, back to the committee as a whole to accept them at a public meeting. Then it has to go on the ACAJ's agenda to be accepted at their public meeting, blah, blah, blah. So, we really don't have 3 months to accomplish a whole heck of a lot.
Yeah, and Mindy, this is Rick. I kind of agree. I think this idea of data standardization across everything is a much bigger project than just a 3-month effort. I think it's going to take, because you're going to have to get everybody together to do this, and that's not going to be able to be accomplished in 3 months. So, but it's a good thing to look forward to go forward. So
I appreciate the concern, but I think where I was going was it's just a recommendation to the ACAJ that we as a membership of the subcommittee have agreed that a statewide tech spec would be helpful. Do they agree with that? And if they do, as part of their recommendation to the ACAJ, the ACAJ agrees with that, then at that point, I, as the chair of the subcommittee, can either task the existing working groups with the discussion and draft of a statewide technical spec, however long that takes them, or appoint a new working group to specifically focus on a statewide tech spec, however long that takes them. The working groups, in my understanding, and LCB Legal can correct me if I'm wrong, they are not held to the interim meetings such as the subcommittee and the ACAJ are. I believe that the working groups can meet all throughout the year, every year. Ms. Norris, am I correct on that?
Kathleen Norris, Deputy Legislative Counsel. Yes, the working groups continue with their duties and can report back to this subcommittee body at any point.
Thank you. So I think it's just a recommendation that we agree upon to give to the ACAJ to create a statewide tech spec. If they agree, then I can go ahead and task that to either an existing working group or create a new working group to start that effort. And it can take as long as we need it to make sure that it's correct and it's agreed upon by all of the impacted parties. So that's where I was going with that. Do the members want to go ahead and take a vote now on what could be included in the report to the ACAJ based on discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Nick with the Washoe County Public Defender's Office. I just have a couple of questions. I'm kind of new to this committee. It's my first time here. What's the timeline for the report? When is it due to the committee? And will we be meeting again prior to that?
Good questions. The committee the ACAJ is meeting November 12th, unless it gets moved. And so LCB staff, can someone please let me know when that report is due prior to the meeting? Is it 3 days prior to the meeting?
Typically, the agenda for the ACAJ is posted at least 3 days before the meeting and the corresponding materials for that agenda.
Thank you. So let me pull up a calendar really quick. And I, along with LCB staff, draft the report. So the members aren't involved in that. Don't worry about that. But I will probably have to have that report finalized and submitted to the ACAJ no later than the 9th of November, hoping for the 6th of November, I'm guessing.
And if I may ask a follow-up question, will the subcommittee be meeting again and or submitting additional reports potentially to the ACAJ committee prior to the next legislative session?
No.
No.
So on that note, and I was going to talk about that, which at the last agenda item, we'll talk about that. So on that note, do the members want me to go ahead and summarize everything that we recommended to be placed into the report? Want me to summarize all that?
That'd be perfect.
Okay, so here we go. Mr. Grierson, your recommendation is to suggest research for specialty courts and recidivism, suggest improved criminal justice information sharing with integrated relationships between NCJUS and the criminal justice agencies to capture and report data that would provide this information. That's one of them. Another one is the recommendations out of the NOC working group presentation regarding amending statute 453.336 and 179A.070 to fix some issues that were presented today. Another one is to task existing working groups or create a new working group to begin developing statewide standard technical specifications for the ease of criminal justice information sharing in the future electronically between all of the data systems throughout the state. Also, I didn't hear much back from anyone on having an independent study conducted. Of course, that would take some hefty research regarding how can we fund that? Where would the money come from? And then where would the third party outside entity come from and who would that be to conduct that study and what do we want them to study? But perhaps what we could do with that suggestion is chew on it, come back next interim and discuss that further, maybe next interim, rather than going forward with the recommendation today.
Sounds good.
Okay, I'll table that for next meeting then.
Madam Chair, I have a motion. If I
Yes.
may. I make a motion to adopt all the topics previously discussed into a report to the ACAJ with the exception of establishing an interim study.
Thank you, Mr. Olmsted. Do I have a second?
Second, Steve Gerson.
Thank you, Mr. Grierson. Any comments, questions before we move forward with the roll call? Remember to indicate yes or no. And Madam Secretary, if you could please take roll call.
Mr. Grierson,
Yes.
Ms. Grosnick,
Yes.
Mr. Lawson,
Yes.
Ms. Sousa Yamas,
Yes.
Ms. Noble,
Yes.
Mr. Olmsted,
Yes.
Ms. Polaski,
Yes.
Mr. Quick,
Yes.
Mr. Stefani,
Yes.
Chair McKay,
Yes.
and it is unanimous.
Thank you so much. So there will be 4 items contained within the report of recommendations to the ACHA. Thank you. Closing that agenda item and moving on to 14, public comment. Public testimony under this item may be presented by phone or written comment. Because of time considerations, each caller offering testimony during this period for public comment will be limited to not more than 2 minutes. A person may also have comments added to the minutes of the meeting by submitting them in writing, either in addition to testifying or in lieu of testifying. Written comments may be submitted by email at jordan.haas@lcb.state.nv.us or facsimile at area code 775-684-6761 or via mail at 401 South Carson Street, Carson City, Nevada 89701. Before, during, or after the meeting. To dial in to provide testimony during this period of public comment in the meeting, anytime after, right now, on Monday, October 19th of 2020, you will dial area code 669-900-6833. When prompted to provide your meeting ID, please enter 960-6907-3487, then press pound. When prompted for a participant ID, please enter pound. To resolve any issues related to dialing in to provide public comment for this meeting, please call area code 775-684-6990. And Ms. Norris has graciously offered to manage the public comment for me. Thank you so much. With that broadcast, please unmute the first caller.
Madam Chair, if we can allow callers just a couple of minutes to call in, about 2 or 3 minutes to call in, because currently we have no one on the line at this time.
Okay, it is 3:58 by my clock. We will take a short 3-minute break until 4:01.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chair McKay.
Yes.
The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you very much. We will close that agenda item and move to the last agenda item under adjournment. And I just want to thank you all again, to the members, the presenters, and LCB staff for coordinating this meeting and being productive. I appreciate our critical partnership, as we are all an important piece of the criminal justice system puzzle, to include the civil agencies as well. So we can't do this without each other. I greatly appreciate everyone's time today. It was my pleasure to be with you. I want to offer you to take care, be safe, and stay healthy. And seeing no other business, the subcommittee will lay dormant until the next interim, which is July at least of next year. So you all will be contacted when it's time to kick these meetings back into gear. Until then, take care, be safe, and stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.